Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are deep into the legacy of Michael Schumacher, the German driver whose 7 World Drivers' Championships and 91 Grand Prix wins set an almost unbelievable standard for Formula One dominance.
A standard that really demands scrutiny, doesn't it? I mean, the sheer magnitude of his records forces us to ask, what was the primary engine of that success?
Exactly. That is the core disagreement we tackle today. Was Michael Schumacher's unparalleled dominance, particularly, let's say, during the 1994 to 2004 era, primarily the result of his exceptional individual driving talent and, his raw racecraft?
Or, and this is where I contend we must look deeper, was his sustained, record-breaking run fundamentally dependent upon the unique strategic and technical supremacy he systematically engineered and really enforced within his teams?
I'll argue his genius behind the wheel was the decisive factor. And I contend that his dominance was, almost solely achievable because of the strategic fortress he engineered around himself.
Okay, well, let's start with what Michael Schumacher brought as an athlete then. His individual skill was frankly revolutionary. He essentially professionalized the sport, pioneering this incredibly rigorous fitness regimen. We know he trained, 4 hours a day, focusing heavily on strengthening the neck muscles to withstand extreme G-forces for, 2 hours straight in a race. This sheer dedication gave him an edge in physical endurance and mental clarity that few rivals could match, allowing him to maintain peak speed when others were clearly fatiguing.
That dedication is undeniable, sure. But individual rigor only gives you the ability to seize opportunities, right? Sustained dominance, that run of 5 consecutive titles, that's built on systems, not just sweat. And Schumacher, I think, recognized this better than anyone. He didn't just drive for Ferrari. He rebuilt it in his image.
And that rebuilding required individual brilliance first. The evidence of his raw racecraft exists independent of that future super team structure he built later. Think of his early years, winning 2 titles at Benetton in machinery often derided as, pretty difficult.
Yeah.
The clearest example for me anyway is his legendary performance at the 1996 Spanish Grand Prix. This was his first season at Ferrari, driving the F310, a car plagued by reliability and aerodynamic issues. His teammate Eddie Irvine called it awful and almost undrivable. Yet in a torrential downpour, Schumacher puts on this display of sheer mastery, taking the lead and consistently lapping, 5 seconds faster than the entire field. That didn't earn him the nickname Regionmeister, Rainmaster, for nothing. That is skill overriding technical deficiency.
Okay, I understand the allure of those singular, exceptional drives, I really do. But they only tell half the story, don't they? The narrative of Schumacher dragging a poor car to glory, it often masks the fundamental requirements for sustained statistical dominance. The Ferrari dynasty wasn't, serendipitous. It was manufactured. His record-breaking run coincided exactly with him personally bringing in the core personnel, Ross Brawn as technical director and Rory Byrne as chief designer, starting around 97. This transformation created a strategic and engineering powerhouse that ended Ferrari's, 21-year title drought. And when we look at the peak years like 2002 and 2004, he was driving the clear-cut fastest, most reliable car on the grid, achieving things like a perfect podium rate in 2002. The system created the environment for those statistics to just explode.
Wait a moment, though. If the system was the key, how do you account for his initial move to Ferrari in 1996? He arrived at a team that hadn't won a driver's championship since 1979. They were in the wilderness, really. Yet he immediately delivered 3 victories in that F310 chassis, which, as you noted, was essentially an underdeveloped piece of junk. That initial success, I think, proves that the driver's unique ability was the primary engine of improvement, forcing the entire organization to lift its game, not merely benefiting from some pre-built advantage.
That's a compelling point, but let's circle back to the context of his earliest superiority at Benetton. You characterized the B194 as an inferior car he overcame, but that entire 1994 season was,
Well, it was rife with controversy regarding aggressive technical interpretation.
Oh, come on.
No, really. That car was disqualified multiple times, once for illegal skid block wear. Now, for the uninitiated, the skid block is a plank on the car's underside, and if it wore down too much, it meant the car was running lower than regulations allowed, which, provided a critical aerodynamic advantage, basically gluing the car to the track. Furthermore, team software was found to contain outlawed launch control functionality, which essentially guaranteed a perfect start every single time. This strongly suggests that his early superiority wasn't simply compensating for a poor car, but rather maximizing an aggressively designed car that, gained an unfair technical advantage.
I see why you think that those breaches somehow invalidate his performance. But you're characterizing those technical skirmishes as unique flaws of his teams. The mid-90s were an engineering arms race. Every top team was aggressively pushing the boundaries of what the regulations allowed. The difference is that Schumacher was perhaps the only driver who could truly maximize the performance output from that kind of aggressively designed, right-on-the-edge machinery. To take a car optimized to that fine degree and still drive it to victory lap after lap requires a precision and speed that is, I believe, entirely individual.
But that pursuit of advantage, it transcended mere technical interpretation. It became a defining element of his competitive personality, what you earlier termed the win-at-all-costs mentality. And we have to look at the narrative inflection points, where that mentality tipped over into, let's call it, strategic manipulation.
Where are you going with this?
I'm referring to the key collisions that eliminated rivals, the 1994 incident with Damon Hill in Australia, and the career-defining moment at Jerez in 1997, where he aggressively turned into Jacques Villeneuve, leading to his unprecedented disqualification from the entire season. These moments, I think, reveal a willingness to eliminate rivals physically when pure driver skill alone might not guarantee the title. That isn't just genius racecraft, it's calculated, physical, strategic manipulation that prioritized the championship over simple sporting merit.
Okay, I would fundamentally reframe those incidents. Not as simple manipulation, but maybe as the extreme symptoms of an intellectual rigor and an uncompromising dedication that, frankly, raised the bar for professionalism in F1. His capacity for strategic thinking was unparalleled. Consider a positive example of that sheer focus. The famous tactical masterstroke at the 1998 Hungarian Grand Prix. Ross Brawn switched him mid-race to a nearly impossible three-stop strategy. Brawn famously told him, "Michael, you have 19 laps to pull up 25 seconds. We need 19 qualifying laps from you."
Right, I remember that.
Think about the mental focus required to treat a multi-lap stint like a single perfect qualifying run, lap after lap in a race environment. Schumacher delivered 19 consecutive laps at qualifying pace, securing the victory on a circuit where overtaking was notoriously difficult. That required immense focus, physical endurance, and supreme precision, demonstrating an ability to operate at his absolute peak for sustained periods that literally no other driver could replicate at the time.
That is an incredible example of individual skill, no doubt. But it also brings us directly back to the strategic system, doesn't it? Who was calculating the tire wear, the fuel consumption, the critical timing needed for that masterstroke? Ross Brawn.
Well, yes, Brawn was key, obviously.
It wasn't just having Brawn. It was Brawn pioneering the use of advanced telemetry for mid-race strategy adaptation, using data to predict opponent moves and manage tires, winning races in the pits before the cars ever crossed the line. This synergy meant the system was fundamentally better at maximizing any car's potential than any other team on the grid.
Okay.
If that system prioritizes championships above everything else, we saw the ruthlessness of that machine plainly with the widely criticized team orders at the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix, where Barrichello was ordered to slow down on the final meters to surrender the win to Schumacher, despite it being only the 6th race of the season, and despite Barrichello dominating the weekend. That kind of organizational protection, designed purely to maximize points for the lead driver, demonstrates that dominance required not just speed, but organizational protection and ruthless strategic execution.
You're focusing entirely on the systemic protection, but let's look at his enduring influence and intrinsic value when that ultimate system wasn't fully functional. If his dominance was purely systemic, why did he still have such a profound impact outside of the peak Ferrari structure?
The comeback?
Look at his comeback years with Mercedes from 2010 to 2012. While, okay, he didn't secure a victory, his participation was far from a failure. At age 41 and older, he still achieved his final podium at the 2012 European Grand Prix and led laps in 2011. Crucially, Ross Brawn credits Schumacher as a foundational figure who played a crucial role in laying the developmental groundwork for Mercedes' future championship-winning success in the subsequent decade. That enduring influence speaks to a deep intrinsic value, a talent for development and feedback that goes far beyond any single technical specification.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the comeback proves intrinsic dominance. Let me tell you why. The raw statistical outcome of those 3 years speaks volumes about what happens when Schumacher is separated from his own perfect Braun-Burn framework.
Okay, what are the stats then?
He achieved 0 wins, 0 pole positions, and statistically never finished higher than 8th in the overall standings. He was in fact consistently outperformed by his much younger teammate Nico Rosberg. While the developmental feedback he provided was, yes, probably invaluable to Mercedes' future, the fact remains that the individual world-beating dominance was not replicable without the specific, supreme technical and strategic environment that he built and maintained at Maranello. The peak success was systemic. The comeback was, well, flashes of talent at best.
The speed was certainly still there, though, wasn't it? As evidenced by him clocking the fastest qualifying time in Monaco in 2012, even if a grid penalty unfortunately negated the pole position. Mechanical misfortunes and, yeah, the difficulty of adapting to new regulations and maybe the rust from his absence were the real culprits. It was misfortune that hampered him, I'd argue, not a lack of inherent talent.
Even acknowledging those isolated bursts of brilliance, those moments don't explain the 5 consecutive titles. They reinforce the distinction, I think. Schumacher had the exceptional talent, yes, but he needed the total technical and strategic control, the impregnable system, to translate that talent into unparalleled, unbreakable dominance.
To wrap up my argument, I must emphasize that Schumacher's records and legendary drives, his raw speed, his pioneering fitness, and his extraordinary ability to perform in adverse conditions and against sometimes superior machinery like the F310 in 1996, they solidify his status as a driver whose talent dictated the results. His ability to push a car exactly to its limit, regardless of its initial specification, often forced the technical environment to rise to his almost impossible level.
While no one denies Michael Schumacher's immense world-class talent, to claim it was the primary driver of his unparalleled dominance overlooks the reality of his most successful era. The 5 consecutive titles and the transformation of Ferrari into an absolute powerhouse were a triumph of organizational structure, strategic ruthlessness, and the relentless, often controversial, pursuit of technical advantage that he personally installed and controlled. His talent was necessary? Yes, absolutely. But the system was the multiplier that delivered the absolute dominance.
The complex relationship between driver genius and technical mastery in Formula One remains a fascinating subject, forever intertwined in the legacy of Michael Schumacher. It's complicated.
Indeed. It leaves the listener to weigh whether genius is defined by the extraordinary skills he displayed on the track, or perhaps by the impenetrable structure he created off the track to ensure those skills were ultimately unbeatable.